Hi Natalie, how are you doing?
I'm doing well today. It's Monday afternoonish, just turned afternoon, so trying to start off the week strong. How about you?
Yeah, it's a great start to the week. We have a festive season going on, so it's all that energy which hopefully we'll see in the live as well.
Awesome.
All right. So, folks, whoever has joined in till yet, hello everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn live session, which is powered by Pepper Content. I am Drishti, and we have a guest joining us today. Before I introduce you to the guest that is here, I would like you to request. I would like to request you that you drop your questions in the comment section if you have any, and we will try to answer the questions either in the session or towards the end. Introducing our guest for today, we have Natalie Marcotulio. She is the driving force behind the success at Navatic. So she has started her career deeply rooted in SEO and digital marketing, specifically for B2B sales and marketing SaaS. And she has always been at the forefront of understanding what businesses need to thrive in the digital age. She currently works as the head of growth and operations at Navatic, where she's all about enhancing the buying experience for SaaS prospects. Something that I personally admire about Natalie is her transition from specializing in a niche like SEO to taking a full funnel marketing and GTM strategy and elevating the entire digital buyer journey. So, Natalie, thank you so much for joining us, and it's fantastic to have you here.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. That was quite the intro. Hope everything I say lives up to it.
I am sure that will be. So, we'll start by setting the context to the topic and also expanding on the relevance of a product launch strategy for SaaS startups, right? So, building a successful product launch for SaaS startups, it's not just about building or waiting, right? It's about creating anticipation, understanding the target audience, positioning in a way that resonates with users, and so on and so forth. So, it's a culmination of strategic positioning, knowing precisely how to grab that spotlight in a saturated market. And in this whole SaaS environment, the launch strategy can either make or break the product success, right? So the first question that arises is that how do you ensure that your launch not only grabs attention but also ensures the sustained growth?
Yeah, I think a lot of it starts with just planning. And this isn't going to be anything new. This is something I've learned from great product marketers, but really just thinking about the difference between, when do I release? When do I start beta testing? When do I start getting feedback on my product versus the launch itself? I think a big mistake that sometimes we see is maybe you've done some research, maybe you've talked to some people, but you haven't necessarily gotten those like case studies, those insights, really that time to get as much enablement as possible from the release and kind of we jump right to the launch, right? Like we just think about how can we make this splashy show versus planning out, how can I make sure I'm getting feedback at every step of the way? So by the time I launch, I know it is something that resonates with my audience.
That's a good start to this. And considering your wide experience, I think the following questions also will have good idea on how to go about a good product launch. So, for a SaaS company, what would be the first step in building a successful product launch strategy?
Yeah, sort of going back to what I was saying, I think number one is the release, right? Like when does this product actually come out versus maybe when do I release it on Product Hunt? When do I make a big splash about it? So first, just figuring out, what is that strategy? How many people do you want to release it first? How much feedback you want to get? For us, when we think about launching new products, we think about, okay, maybe we have to hit this minimum of beta testers and we need to get this many to actively use it before we move on to the next phase. So really just planning it out in phases. Okay, what goal do I need to hit? What milestone? And that makes sure along the way, right? It just kind of safeguards you from releasing something that maybe your audience isn't interested in or you're missing a major feature that they would have wanted. It just gives you kind of those like checkpoints.
That's a good start. And somebody who has been a part of product launches, one thing that I would like to understand, which is also like a sub question to this, is how would you understand the number of beta users that you would actually want? Like, how would you decide on the targets?
I wish I had like a magic formula for this. I'd say it does depend one on your audience, right? Like if you especially already have a product and maybe this is like an upsell feature, an additional feature, there might only be a certain subset that works with it. For example, like everyone loves to build for enterprise. You probably don't have, a bunch of enterprise companies. I would say if you could get like 10-ish% of your companies, enough where it's like, more than five, enough where it's like it feels like a good sample size, but I also don't think I think you can kind of go in the opposite direction. And if you over beta test, you just end up running into some of the same insights. For us, like it ended up being a little more qualitative. I remember when we were doing our research, we just found at some point, like, okay, we're just hearing the same things over and over again. We're not really
Mhm.
learning anything new. I think that's time when we're good with beta testing.
Yeah, that's actually a good touch point to stop with the beta testing. That's a great insight. So, what would you put as the primary objectives when building a product launch strategy, and how do they manifest them in the different stages of the launch?
Yeah. So going back to that release, I think that's almost like the biggest thing you're testing for is just kind of like early signs of product market fit or just product, I don't know, audience fit if you're not ready to go for the whole marketing thing yet. But really
Yeah.
just making sure that what you built satisfies what you like the problem you end up wanting to solve. So going back to your audience, making sure it's like, yes, what I ultimately built is what you were asking for, solves the issue that I have first had the hypothesis around. I think beta testing usually answers that, right? Like it's just adoption. Are people using it? Are they using it actively? Are they even step further? Can you get some people to pay for it? I think that's huge. So really just doing that little product market fit. And then once you actually launch, I think it entirely switched to scale. So yes, maybe in the early stage when you release it, you can get people to buy it, but maybe you really have to handhold them through that beta process, right? Like maybe it's you have to set everything up manually. Maybe it is a lot of, just like manual grunt work in the early days versus when you want it to become a scalable product and you do this big flashy launch, you want to make sure you have the process in place where it's not needed to get on like a call, like, I don't know, like 3 hour long call with every single new customer walking them
Yes.
through it. It can kind of exist on its own.
Right. So maybe in the initial pass or in the beta testing phase, it's more around product adoption than knowing if they would pay for it or not. Like if they start using the product, you know that they would go ahead and pay going forward. So yeah, that's a really good way to know the product market fit, if whether that's there. And building anticipation and curiosity of a product is also one of the important goals in the launch strategy. Like I would personally want people to be curious and they would want to know what's coming. So can you share some tactics or ideas that SaaS startups can use to generate that buzz around the product in the stages before the launch?
Yeah, I'm gonna steal some examples from customers here and then some favorite launches I've seen. So, first example from a customer, Crossbeam. One thing I really love that they did, and this was for a new product, so like an upsell product, but they essentially used interactive demos during a conference. And you could also do this with like GIFs or videos if you don't have one, and just started getting attendees interested in their product like during the conference. It wasn't fully built out yet, but basically opted them right into their beta program there. I think that's great because like conferences, any sort of like one to one, maybe it's a happy hour, maybe you're just meeting people, but I think that's when you really can get some great feedback and you can see it on their face, right? Like even in Zoom, sometimes maybe you can hide a little bit your reactions to things versus that in person. Okay, you're getting understanding how they're using it, getting them excited. I think beyond that, just teasing as much as you can around the product leading up to it. So again, whether that's demos, videos, gifts, or even like data, I think one thing that KeyPlay did really well, if you're familiar with them, they launched Pure Signal, and essentially leading up to Pure Signal, they had like all of this data around SaaS, different SaaS companies, and their attributes like industries or what industries are growing the most, and they sort of got everyone really excited about their product by just launching a bunch of the data that you would get using their product on LinkedIn for like months in advance. So I think it's possible when you can just leave those little like breadcrumbs for people, get them excited about it, that that kind of gets people like you don't have to have a fully built out product before people start understanding, okay, this is the value I'm going to get from your product.
Yeah. The peer signal one, that was actually a very good strategy where you actually use the product to show them the value. It's also like you show them not aha moment exactly, but some aha before they've actually seen the product also. So that's what that was really great. So you've spoken at great lengths about the role of the interactive demos in multiple product launches and their strategies, right? So why do you think they are becoming such a huge part and a very popular tool for SaaS products? And what are the key elements that one should keep in mind when they are creating such interactive demos?
I think the biggest reason is just buyers are like pickier and busier with their time than ever. I think I've even seen this with my own time. I don't know if it's just the fact that we're, as everyone's saying, like you have to do more. It's just also like post holiday season, post the summer, at least it felt like when September hit, things got crazy. So I think everyone's a little hesitant to jump into like jumping on a sales call, like a 30-minute at least demo if I want to see your product. Or if even if it is PLG, like that's still work that I have to take to set it up. So I think before committing even to that first set of the call or setting it up, they just want to match like, okay, is the thing that you built, does it actually accomplish like what I'm looking for? Is it actually solve my problem? So I think that's why, especially with new product launches, it has become so popular because it is a way to validate, okay, this is what I'm looking for. It is worth me taking that 30-minute demo. I'm not going to waste my time. And then to your second point about implementing, kind of goes hand in hand, but I think at first when people build interactive demos, they're tempted to almost make it like a how to. Like we're used to making how to videos, tutorials, showing the how would I set this up. But really, you're just convincing them that they should get on that, again, that first demo, that they should set it up in your PLG motion. So it should really focus on the value. And so that means maybe not showing like how to set it up, unless part of the value prop is how easy it is to set up, but really want to show the end state, kind of similar to what we were talking about with Pure Signal and the data. Like what they were showing at first was the end state you get from using their product. And that's the same how you should think about interactive demo.
So should it be more around how they can solve a use case, or should it be based around what results they would get from that? Like what is the better way of doing that demo?
I think the best I've seen does both. So we'll see, maybe they're showing a particular use case for a particular persona, but in it, they'll weave in like case studies, right? They'll weave in, when X customer did this workflow or when they tried this product, they saw X results. So I think you can do a little bit of both. It should just be like a story. And in that story, you want to weave in results if it makes sense.
Yeah. So I'm sure you will also agree that content should be accessible to all audiences, and even when we are targeting one particular audience. So can you provide tips on tailoring the demo content to resonate with different target audience?
I've seen companies do this in two really cool ways. So I'll touch on both. The first is demo centers. So we've had a couple customers who basically a page on their website, it will just be called the demo center, and it has different use cases. One example that I love, Athenian, they actually have it broken out by like what challenge are you trying to solve, and it'll list out all the different pain points. So then when you click into one, it does launch into like an individual 30-second interactive demo. So that's one, you can kind of lay it all out there. Some really great ones also have filters. So you could even filter by audience or use case or feature. So it's just like, hey, all my demos are here. You decide what you want to look for, your specific use case. Another approach you could do, and if you're looking for a good example for this, Jellyfish, their website is insane, but you could just put it on use case specific pages. So versus having one page with all your demos in a demo center, if your website's already laid out where you maybe have like the solutions tab with multiple different use cases or persona tabs, you can just embed an interactive demo for that specific use case on that page.
Okay. So, so when we say that, like suppose for some companies, it's also because it like I can take an example of paper content. So because we cater to different industries, we also cater to different regions now that we are doing the GTM across, and also different personas can use the platform. So in that case, the permutation combinations are a lot. So, what would be your tip to manage in case there are, such cases coming in?
I do think if you have multiple personas, use cases, regions going on at the same time, that's when a demo center can be really nice because you can add in that filtering level and you don't need like a million landing pages to go through them all. The user can just go in and say, I'm from this region, I'm this use case, I'm this persona, and then have one tailored to them.
All right, understood. So, what's that one thing about a product launch strategy that keeps you awake at night but excited for the next day?
I think the biggest thing, and this is my favorite part about the product launch strategy, and this is why, again, emphasize the like the importance of the pre-launch, like getting that feedback, is just hearing, like, you think you have this idea of how customers are going to use it, and then they always blow my mind. Constantly my customers are using interactive demos in ways I never think about. When we release a new product, their use cases are different than what I would have thought of. So I think just I get really excited about seeing, I have an hypothesis of how I think they're going to use it, how much does it align, and then just kind of being on your toes when you do see maybe they're using it in a unique way or not how you expected. Like, thinking like, should we be positioning it more that way? Is that effective? Is it not? Do we need to train them? So that's sort of my favorite part. It's always exciting, but a little scary to see like, oh, was I right? How I expected this would be used.
Are there also some metrics that you look at which helps you understand like how fast people are using it or how efficiently people are using it, apart from of course going through the platform and those things?
I think the biggest is just adoption for us, which seems kind of might be a little bit of an obvious one, but like, are they going day in and day out? Like, weekly active users, even daily active users can be most helpful to make sure it's like, okay, did they log into this new feature once, or are they actively building out using it, having multiple members of their team use it? I think that can be. I don't have like an exact metric I look for, but that can be a good indication of they're actually seeing value versus like, oh, they logged in once during their, like, let's say there's a trial. It's probably not as good as the person who logged in 10 times and invited another user to use it.
Right, right. Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Um, there's a growing belief that the fail fast, pivot quickly mantra leads to half baked SaaS products being launched. Is this trend damaging the industry's reputation? Do you think that?
I think it can. I think you can view it in a few different ways. I think in one way, as I've talked about, like part of that release strategy is, putting it out, getting feedback, seeing if you have product market fit and iterating from there. And that's kind of a hard strategy to do if you're waiting until your product is 100% baked out. I do think doing the early kind of smaller testing, make sure that you are gathering those insights and moving quickly without necessarily needing to like relaunch your product 10 times. That's why we wait until we know the product is 100% polished for launched. But I do think there is this trend I've been seeing recently, and I think it's because every market is so competitive and there's just like so much SaaS products out there that there's a little bit too much of this like check the box mentality with new products. Like sometimes it's like, oh, our competitor has it, so we have to have it. This is going to be an obvious one, but I think AI is a perfect example of that, where a lot of products are just adding it in for the sake of saying, oh, I have AI, versus like, oh, how would this really help the workflow of my users? And there's nothing wrong with like, there's a lot of ways it can really help the workflow of your users, but just taking the time to figure that out, do the research, see how they're using it versus just like, oh, I'm just going to throw an AI to check the box.
I guess this is also a case with the messaging. Like I've seen a lot of SaaS products just throw in AI based or AI powered, where it's not actually AI powered, and I don't know if it's visible or it's very apparent to audiences everywhere. But when you have been part of products and when you actually understand it, it does look like it's we understand that it's a buzzword, but it doesn't work always. So
I
yeah.
don't know the last time I've seen a SaaS website where like the description under the header wasn't like AI powered insights or AI powered. Like, it is interesting how suddenly within like 2 months, every single company was AI powered.
Yeah. And I've been guilty. I'll not lie. Like because it did sound like that it might entice users, but going forward when we started interacting with customers is where we understood that AI powered is not something that they always want, like you just said. As long as it fits the use case, with AI powered or without AI powered would not make a lot of difference to the customer. So yeah.
I think we've all been guilty of trying it out, but I think, like I said, there's nothing wrong with it. It's more just thinking, how can this actually improve my workflow versus kind of that check the box mentality of like, oh, I just need to say we have AI because our competitor has it.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So, what are your top three brands that have excelled at creating interactive demos and generally had a great launch strategy, apart from the ones you mentioned earlier?
I am going to go in a little bit more into Crossbeam because they deserve a lot of praise for what they've been doing. I think the coolest thing beyond just the conference example I talked about before was the fact that they also use it for internal training, which I think is also really important for product launches, something I haven't even touched on yet. But like, when you're launching a new product, making sure everyone has the same talk track, everyone understands what it does, no one is over promising, no one is under promising. I think that is also a really important, like whether again it's gifts, videos, or interactive demos, just some sort of enablement. And what I found really impressive is they've said at this point, like 90% of the time they release new products, they have an internal trading tool for it, which I feel like is definitely a standard I strive for and something to just keep in mind. And something we're actually tracking this quarter as an OKR is making sure that like for major product releases, we always have an internal and an external demo. Another really cool use case, this is a little more once you've, I talked about before the two different points where it's like the release, the launch, and the goal of the launch is to scale the new product, not just do everything manually. This is a really cool example of scaling upsell. So our customer Gorgeous, they actually have interactive demos in app. And on their homepage, they have one of the buttons you can explore just says like discover new upsell products. And versus having to have the user like set up the new product or give them a free trial, they just let them see a quick 30-second interactive demo. And then if they want to add that upsell feature, they can just add it right there in the product and buy it. So that was really cool. Like you don't necessarily need to jump on an AM call every time you want to add maybe a simple new product to your existing product. And the last one I'll talk about is Clue. I think they do some of the best as far as new product releases. And basically, what they do is for every, again, big product release, they put out these really in depth, I don't even want to call them a blog post. I don't think that's doing it justice, but like release post where it has videos, GIFs, interactive demos. And then they do a lot of social leading up to that and during the launch with like mini versions of those GIFs or interactive demos, again, highlighting really just the value of the new feature. I think that's one thing they do really well is it's not just like, hey, we will launch this new feature, here's everything it can do. It's really like, this is why. It's almost every single time they launch a new feature, it's almost like a mini category. It's this is the value you're getting from it. So highly recommend checking out the Clue like release blogs.
Gorgeous, I actually have, and I was not aware that if it's whether they are using yours, but yeah, Gorgeous. I have actually observed them like a hawk, and Gorgeous is fantastic. Yeah.
That's awesome to hear. Yeah, they showed us a little bit around how they like set it up and the different in-app demos they have. And again, talking before about like one of my favorite parts is seeing how customers use it. I would never expect that was one where it's like I never even thought about adding interactive demos in the product, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah. So, just a follow up question to that.
Mhm.
So, when you say that people use this demos and GIFs when they create, so one of the things where you put this is maybe on your website, be it be a landing page or a release post or even in your help center. But where do you think these could be repurposed or used elsewhere, where you can actually get people to come to your website? Like, are these some of the use cases that can be explored?
Yeah, I'd say the most common use case is actually that website use case you mentioned. So giving people from the website itself a little taste of your product. But
Right.
to get people to the website, we've been seeing people use it in like LinkedIn and Google ads. One
Okay.
really cool use case I love is like especially competitive landing pages, because so often it's you're again describing the product and maybe you're saying how, oh, we're so much easier to use, but it's much easier to show that than say that. So we'll see customers embed a quick little interactive demo of, hey, this is really how we differ. Or even top of funnel blog content versus again explaining like this is like one really cool example. I remember it was like looking the product was showing how to look up like emails in their tool. So versus writing that all out, it's like here's a quick little demo showing how you would do that. And it's still very top of funnel. It wasn't necessarily like an enablement piece. It was more like, oh, how to find someone's email.
Mhm.
Um, but I thought that was really cool. Again, just wherever you can, instead of having to write it all out, like just showing them.
Right. Right. All right, Natalie, those were all the questions that I had from my end. We do have some questions from the audience that I will read out. So, one question is from Prachi. So, she's asking that how to create a 360 digital marketing strategy for SaaS software. And she's asked specifically for Indian market, but maybe you can mention it for Indian plus other markets as well. And she's asking whether you can give just a quick gist of it.
Yeah, and full transparency, I don't have much experience just building it for the Indian market. But the way I would go about creating a 360 digital marketing strategy, I think first is just kind of all relates back to like going back to your audience, figuring out what the goals, what audience that you're going after, and then just start experimenting with different channels. So, like if I'm entering into a company, I'm going to see what channels have started already working a little bit, what early signs do I have, and then how do I just experiment and rev those up. Um, yeah, I think that's kind of like a generic term for 360 digital marketing strategy. I'd happy to also talk offline. I think I could go on for that for like 30 minutes. But I think the biggest thing for any new marketing campaign I run is really just what is my goals? What is my audience? What channels do I think make sense for that audience? How can I low budget experiment in those channels? And then the ones that I'm seeing success, how do I, add more fuel to that?
Right. Thank you for that. The second question is from Erica. Would you have an advice? What would you have advice for aspiring B2B SaaS content writers? Any do's and don'ts that have stood out for you from your personal experience with writers for your brand?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for me when I'm looking for SaaS content writers, and I probably work with like 10 different freelance SaaS content writers at this point, is someone who just clearly understands the industry. So I do generally look for someone who's maybe worked in the industry before or written for SaaS before. And the main reason is I think these days, especially with AI writing more blog content, it's kind of clear when you're reading it, like, does this person really understand my audience? Like a good example I give a lot is sometimes you read blog posts and you'll notice like customers and prospect, those two words are interchanged a lot. It doesn't really make sense. It's like, oh, when you're trying to sell customers, there's like they're already a customer. So just little things like that where you can sort of tell, like, okay, this person really understands it versus maybe they're just like repurposing other content. So just as much as possible, like speaking to SaaS industry experts, getting experience writing for it, really understanding the terminology and the lingo they use. I think that goes a long way. And like I can pretty when I was looking for writers, I could really easily tell from reading their past work, like, oh, they really do understand the SaaS industry versus like, oh, maybe they needed to get a little more familiar with it.
Understood. Thank you so much for that. I
Yeah.
think we are done with all the questions for today. So Natalie, it was great talking to you, and this was a really good session. I am a product marketer, so this has helped me a lot. Thank you so much, and hopefully we will have some more. Oh, there's one more question, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Can you give a brief step-by-step pre-launch campaign for a successful launch?
Yeah, we have a blog post on this that I can give a quick summary, but summarizing the pre-launch campaign in 2 minutes might be a little difficult. But I would say the biggest thing is one, again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record for this, but always with everything I do, it's determine the goal and the audience you're going after. Then get some initial data, qualitative and quantitative. So again, get beta testers, get people to use it for free, just get some insights and figure out how are they planning to use it, what are like if you can get any early numbers or case studies, I think that goes a long way. And then repurposing that for enablement for that like pre-launch excitement post, like plan out a social media schedule, plan out a big product hunt launch. Like and just making sure that you have those really solidified use cases and data that you got from that testing phase. But I'll drop in this blog post, that will do a better example than my quick 1 minute rundown.
Thank you so much, Natalie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you so much for joining, and have a good day ahead. Thank you so much.
Bye
Thanks everyone
everyone.
for joining as well. Bye bye.